What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I'm getting very close to my 20th anniversary of living in Japan, and I actually just celebrated my 22nd anniversary of touching down in Japan for the first time on July 27th, 2002. I went back to the US for grad school for a couple of years, which is why I haven't been here for 22 years, but basically, after sharing this information in last week's video, a long-time subscriber and friend asked me, over these 20 years of living in Japan, what would I have done differently? And I thought, that's a great question, and I thought I'd make it today's topic. So without further ado, what would I change about my life in Japan over the past 20 years if I could have done so? Now, the first one should be pretty obvious, but can't be emphasized enough. I wish I had gotten more serious and deep into the study of Japanese right from the beginning. I wish I'd done what my friend Jason did, who was living in the same town with me back when I was in Yamanashi Prefecture. He took one of the first breaks from our job. We were working as assistant language teachers in local junior high schools. He took his first break and he went up to Hokkaido and entered a Japanese intensive language school where he basically spent an entire month spending some time doing touristy stuff in Hokkaido, but mostly studying Japanese. And I wish I had done something along those lines. If I had gotten better at Japanese earlier on, I probably would have made more friends, I would have been more outgoing in my early stage, and basically, in general, life would have been a lot easier, a lot quicker. And I would have gotten over some early obstacles that I had that were dealing with the language gap and language problems. So definitely studying Japanese more would have been a better thing. You know, my Japanese is all right now. I still need to do more formal study, especially for reading and writing, in terms of getting really good business level Japanese, and you know, when it comes to the kanji and vocabulary of that sort of level, I still need to work on that. And I also wish I had known earlier what kind of studying worked for me, because for the longest time I was trying to study on my own with like flashcards and vocabulary lists and kanji lists and that sort of thing. And I quickly realized, no, actually I'm lying. I didn't quickly realize. It took me a long time to realize that I was more often than not learning the cards and the papers that I was using rather than learning the language. Like, I would do flashcard drills and I would get all of them correctly, and then I'd ask my wife to make a quiz out of those kanji that were on the flashcards. And now that they were in the context of something completely different, not the flashcards themselves, I didn't do very well. So what I finally figured out was by reading stories, like short stories, or by reading manga, I was encountering kanji and vocabulary again and again in context. So in conversations between characters, in descriptions, in these short stories, and that has really helped me greatly when it comes to learning vocabulary and kanji. Seeing them in context is what I need for my brain to remember these things. Now, you can take this video today as advice. Certainly, I do advise you to learn Japanese, especially if you're planning to live here for the long term. I get it if you're only here for a couple years and you're thinking, it's probably not worth the effort. You can still have a really excellent time, a lot of fun in Japan, even if your language isn't very good. But if you plan to stay, definitely get on that. And even if you don't plan to stay, well, you might end up anyways. I didn't think I was going to be in Japan beyond 2, maybe 3 years, and here I am 20 years later. So staying was never part of the plan in the beginning, but it ended up happening that way. Now, the next thing, I don't know if I necessarily recommend this, but I guess it's one of my regrets, and this might surprise some people, but I wish I had lived in Tokyo. I wish that in my younger years, and I'm talking like in my mid to late 20s, I could have had the experience of living in the big city, experiencing that Tokyo nightlife as a young man. Now, in terms of my life at that time, it's really hard to imagine how I could have pulled this off. There never really was a clear opportunity for me to move and live and work in Tokyo when I was younger. But at the same time, I wish I could have somehow made that opportunity happen, because it would have been a lot of fun to experience the big city at a younger age. Now, But for that, I realized pretty early on that the city is not really for me in the long term. I knew I didn't want to live in Tokyo, you know, at my age now. I'm much more of a country person. I'd rather be out in the mountains. I'd rather be close to hiking territory. Basically, my next regret is that I still am in the greater metropolitan area of Tokyo. I mean, I live in Yokohama. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit quieter, a little more remote. Maybe remote's not the right word, but it's a little more countryside, especially if you get into certain areas. Like, I don't live in the middle of the city like where I am right now. So I enjoy coming to places like this, but I don't want to live in the big city. And my regret, I guess, is that when I came back to Japan and was looking for university jobs, I had it kind of set in my mind that I needed to be in Tokyo, Yokohama area. And that's really where I looked at most of the job opportunities. I wish now that I had spent more time researching and actually trying to find jobs out in the countryside, because really that is much more my speed. If I had lived in Tokyo as a young man for 2 or 3 years, I probably would have had a much stronger feeling that I didn't really want to be in Tokyo, and I'd already had that experience, so I didn't need to live in Tokyo after that. So I wish I'd spent more time researching countryside jobs, and they really do exist. And this goes back to the first point I made about having good Japanese. A lot of the countryside universities, for example, have job listings on their own proprietary website rather than on a job site, and it certainly isn't listed in English. For example, I was looking at a university in Nagano Prefecture recently. They had a bunch of job listings on their website in Japanese, and I was thinking, oh, I'd love to apply for those. Not really in a place in my life where I can at the moment, but I wish I was able to. And you wouldn't be able to find those jobs if you didn't have the Japanese language ability in order to, you know, discover them in the first place and then read what it is you need to do to apply for the job. So I guess what I'm saying is, as far as a recommendation for anyone who's living in Japan or who wants to live in Japan, you don't need to compromise and say, okay, well, I guess I have to live in Tokyo because that's where all the work is. That's not necessarily the case. If you want to try out the deep countryside, one of my friends and subscribers was talking about how they need to find someone to come out to his rural place in Kagoshima Prefecture and be an assistant language teacher out there. And you're not going to easily find those places unless you look for them, but they exist. So if you want to try to live out in a certain area of Japan, just be patient, check job sites, check actual sites from the schools themselves or the business itself. If you're looking for some kind of company job, you don't necessarily need to compromise, and that is the advice I would give. I compromised back when I was looking for jobs, thinking that I had to be in the Tokyo area in order to start my university career, and that's not really the case. It's not a huge regret. I mean, I like Yokohama and I've enjoyed my job since I've been here, but part of me still wishes that I could have spent more time trying to figure out a countryside location. Now, when I read the question by that subscriber and friend asking me what my regrets were or what I would have changed, the first thing that popped into my head was, I wish I had traveled more. But I realized that a lot of that is, I always wish I could travel more. If I could just travel constantly, I would. I love getting around Japan. I love trying to travel to the other countries around Japan. It's never enough. I mean, if I look at my first 3 years when I was an ALT, the assistant language teacher, I used my vacations very well. I traveled as far as Hiroshima. I went to Kyoto several times, Nara, Osaka, went to Nagano more than once. I went to Gifu Prefecture and Tochigi Prefecture. I got around. You know, I visited Yokohama during that time because I was living in Yamanashi, not Yokohama. So I would come into Tokyo and Yokohama when I could. But it was after that, it was when I really started my career, when I came back to Japan after graduate school, that, you know, you get kind of bogged down in daily life and routine, and your opportunities to travel are less. Especially I got married and had a child, and so now traveling means paying for 3 people instead of 1, so it's more expensive. And because everyone has their own schedules, the kid and mom, you know, finding the best time to do that sort of travel is, you know, it's problematic. And then of course the pandemic happened, which basically cut 2 years out of our traveling ability. Yeah, I would love to travel more, and especially other countries in Asia, because let's be honest, I haven't visited many of the countries that so many of my friends living here have. I've never been to Korea, for example. I haven't been to Thailand or Vietnam yet. Where have I been? I've been to mainland China, Singapore, and I went down to Australia as well. So I'm not particularly well traveled in terms of places outside of Japan. Yeah, if you have the time and you have the money, travel. And I guess another regret about the early travel that I did is that I wasn't very educated about what I was looking at. So the first time I went to Kyoto, for example, I just ended up going to shrine and temple after shrine and temple to become a little bit boring and redundant, because I didn't really know what I was looking at or understand the historical significance or particular beauty of the place that I was visiting. And so part of my love affair with Japan has been to increase my reading and try to read as much material on Japanese culture and Japanese sites and beautiful places and historical places, so that when I go there, I know what I'm looking at. And actually the way I travel now is I read, for example, a book like Kyoto, this one, and I find myself making a list of, okay, next time I go to Kyoto, I'm definitely going here and here and here, because I'm intrigued by the place already. So I feel like some of my early trips were not wasted, but were not as deep and easy to appreciate as they could have been if I'd been more knowledgeable. So I do recommend, you know, even if it's just reading up on the place you're going while you're on the bullet train, you know, like reading on the internet, trying to find information about where you're going, so that when you get there, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is what they talked about, and oh, and if I go down this street, I'll find blah, blah, blah. Being a little more knowledgeable goes a long way, especially when you're exploring a foreign culture, foreign history, foreign society like Japan. These days, I also wish that I had more Japanese related hobbies. My main hobbies these days are going to the gym and running and reading and doing this YouTube channel. So I no longer do things like I used to when I was an ALT, which are things like taking shamisen lessons. And I was doing martial arts back then as well. So there are a number of things that I did in the past, but I don't do anything particularly Japanese now. I'm thinking that at some point I would like to take up calligraphy, because I figure that would be a good way to study vocabulary and kanji while actually learning how to write properly. I mean, my writing is pretty atrocious, even in English, so taking calligraphy would be a good, well-rounding skill for me to try, and, you know, embrace that kind of perfectionist Japanese culture that goes hand in hand with doing an art form like calligraphy. So in a way, it's not entirely a list of regrets or things I wish I'd done different. It's also kind of a call to myself to change how things are now, so that I become more in touch with my life here in Japan, and, you know, keep that love affair with the country and the culture just continuing to grow and expand, and let my knowledge grow along with it. Landmark Tower behind me. Okay, what is the final thing I would change about my 20 years here? And the last one on the list is I would have started this YouTube channel much earlier. Not only do I enjoy doing this, but I've said it before and I'm saying it again right now, this channel has been really instrumental in helping me break out of kind of my daily routine, the sort of mundane daily lifestyle that everyone falls into. Work, go home, eat, sleep, watch Netflix, whatever. You get into this routine, and by starting this channel, it gets me out of the routine all the time. Like, I'm constantly thinking about what do I want to talk about in a particular week's video, putting together an outline of what I'm planning to say, figuring out, oh, where am I going to go this week to actually film the video, and, you know, going there. Like, you know, I had no other real reason to come to Yokohama, central Yokohama today, but I wanted to film here. It's been a long time, I think, since my how to prepare or be prepared for a disaster video was the last time I filmed a video in this area. So I wanted to get back. It's been a while since I've been to the middle of Yokohama. And it's also got me constantly thinking about my life in Japan and what do I know about Japanese society and culture that I feel I can share. And so this channel has helped me step out of my routine and has helped me keep kind of a rekindling constantly of my love affair with this country, in how I'm going to talk about it and how I'm going to express my views, idea, and love for this society to all of you who are watching the videos. So yeah, I wish I had started this earlier for that reason. And I would say that anyone who comes to Japan and you feel you have something to say about your life here, or there's something about the culture that you really want to do a deep dive in and share with the people on YouTube, I say go for it. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need, you know, high production value stuff. You can just film with your iPhone or whatever and put your stuff on YouTube. The earlier the better, because you're going to grow through the experience of doing YouTube in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. I've certainly found that to be the case, and it doesn't matter if my channel has 100 subscribers or 3,000 like it has now, or if it gets up to 10,000 someday. That's great, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it largely because it really has helped me connect with me and my relationship to the country of Japan. All right, so those are the things that I would have done differently or changed, or regret's the wrong word. I don't really regret anything. I've had a really good life here in Japan. I have a really good relationship with my wife. I have an excellent relationship with her family. And basically, I have nothing to be really upset about in terms of how I have lived my life here in Japan. And I certainly wouldn't give up. And I certainly wouldn't give up the kid for any chance to go back and change. So let us know what you think. Have you been living here a long time and you have some things that you wish you'd done differently, or any of mine resonate with you? Let us know in the comments below. I love reading comments and I try to reply to all of them. I also want to give a shout out to a viewer who, while I was walking through Yokohama Station just a few minutes ago, called out to me and said, "Hey, I watch your videos." And I think that's only the third time that someone has recognized me on the street, and so that kind of made my day. That felt really good. I don't expect to be recognized yet, so that was kind of fun. So shout out to him. Hope you're watching this video as well, and thank you to all of you who are watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like and subscribe if you aren't subscribed, and if you got value out of the video, that's what the like button is for. And even better, share this with someone who you think will enjoy it as well. I also invite you to check me out on Instagram. Over there, it's xchapter, the same as this channel's name, so just at xchapter on Instagram. And I also have my podcast, which I'm going to be moving to a new platform soon. I haven't dropped my episode about the gentleman from Taiwan yet, because I'm in the process of moving my episodes over to a new platform, because I'm paying a monthly fee right now and there are free platforms out there. So I'm thinking, why in the world am I paying money when it could be free? And so that's what's going on in that regard. But the episodes are still live on Spotify or other major podcast platforms. So the Journal of Japan Journeys, check that out if you would. Thanks again for watching this particular video, and I will catch you next week. Peace.